Alex Garland has quickly made a name for himself with his directorial debut Ex Machina, and has since done a miniseries Devs and a couple other features like Annihilation, Men, and his latest film Civil War is out in theaters now. He's also worked as a writer with Danny Boyle for Sunshine and 28 Days Later. He also wrote for Dredd and Never Let Me Go, and he even did the writing for some video games like Devil May Cry and a Batman miniseries Black and White. So he's got an interesting overall filmography. Usually with these brackets, we just do the filmography of someone on the directing side. With Garland, we do have a writer-director that we both really appreciate, and we can discuss if he actually has made a bad film. So Lachlan, we are gonna have 9 of his credited works here go up against each other in a single and in elimination bracket form. Anything else you want to mention before we dive into the first round of this stacked bracket?
I'm nervous. What's the first movies up?
Well, because we do have 9 titles here, that means that we do need a little bit of a play-in round before we have that seeding from 1 through 8. Going by ratings, it's a bit harder because Devs isn't on Letterboxd, and I usually like to go by Letterboxd ratings. It means that in the first round, Men, his by far lowest rated film on IMDb and on Letterboxd, is going up against Devs, which does have a way better rating on IMDb. Lachlan, do you like Devs more than you like Men? Or where do you land there?
So I'm in a mixed bag because I found Men my least favorite at the time of Garland's films, at least initially when it released. And with Devs, it did take me a while to get into it. At least I watched it, paused it, continued it a week later, and kind of binged through it all in one sitting. So for me, I felt that with Men, at least I could watch it, where with Devs, it took me a hot minute to really get into it. But at the end of the day, I did enjoy both. I enjoyed where both went. And I thought that at least out of the two, Men was the one that kind of comes up on top.
Men is the one that comes on top, so you'd prefer it over Devs.
Yep.
Interesting choice there, because for me, it's a bit of a toss-up. I think that Devs is intriguing, but I didn't hate on Men as much as some others did. I do have my gun hat, which is where I got to see it, and I'm blanking on a name here, but she was in attendance. Jessie Buckley was in attendance as well, and Roy, what's his name? The other lead who plays the man, who's often naked. And I had quite a good time with it. I think Devs is a bit underwhelming. Ultimately, where it goes, I think it has some interesting ideas, but Garland shines better in the setup of a world than he does with weaving his characters through a really intriguing world. And I think that I'm also gonna go with Men here, so a bit of an upset, I guess, when it comes to the ratings. We're putting that into the next round. So that means we do have our 4 matchups for the first round, which is Ex Machina against Men, Sunshine against Dredd, 28 Days Later against Never Let Me Go, and Civil War against Annihilation. So funnily enough, we do have his writing credits going up against each other and his directing gigs, at least in the first round. With Ex Machina against Men, is this even a contest, or are we just gonna vote through Ex Machina over Men?
I think we're just gonna have to vote through Ex Machina.
Yeah, I think it doesn't really hold the candle
more than we like Men.
It's that for sure, and yeah, it's one of the, I guess, contenders for his best film. So I'm gonna chat about that in a bit. Now, Sunshine and Dredd, 2 films that I had to catch up on from his. I wasn't familiar with it.
Dredd was the only one of the writing credits that I have seen, and I did remember the movie being a bit of a mediocre bath, but I held it pretty close to my heart. I just had a lot of fun with it. So for me, it's got like a mixed emotion to it. However, this was my first time watching Sunshine, and Sunshine was a lot of fun. And the only thing I knew of Sunshine was the controversial third act, where some people love it, some people hate it, and I didn't know where I was going to land. I landed in the park that enjoyed it. So for me, Dredd I hold in my heart, but Sunshine took me by the hand and took me on a journey that I actually quite enjoyed. So for me, it's going to go to Sunshine.
It's probably his 2 bloodiest films overall. the most brutal ones, I'd say. And with Sunshine, you might not be expecting that, but it is pretty gruesome. And to no surprise at all, this movie, like when I looked at it, and the cast is crazy. Like especially now in 2024, looking at that, it's really impressive, the people in front of the camera for that. And Danny Boyle is one of the few people who gives Cillian Murphy lead roles. We're gonna talk about it in a bit with 28 Days Later. I think Dredd feels like the type of movie that has a tie over with like a toy, and then some kids really enjoy it, and that's like that coming to life. It feels like it's springing from the mind of a kid who is like has this really out there big city, and we gotta fight crime kind of thing with Judge Dredd as the central character. I didn't really like most of it. I liked how over the top the violence gets. I think that kind of works, but with a pretty interesting sci-fi premise of needing to I guess birth another son in a way, or like keep the son alive. I think that that's really intriguing, and then it just has a ton of talented people in front of the camera. Not all of them are like given great stuff to work with, but the imagery in Sunshine is a bit more iconic to me than the one in Dredd, so I'm also gonna go with Sunshine over Dredd. So it moves on into the semifinals. Lachlan, our next matchup, 28 Days Later versus Never Let Me Go. Now, I do have to come clean, Lachlan. I didn't have time to fully watch Never Let Me Go. It was the lowest one on my list. But I did see 28 Days Later. So it feels like a bit unfair because it's likely going to be the one that moves on. You've seen it, or you've seen at least most of it. Like, would it be a rival to 28 Days Later?
I
You
squeezed
squeezed them all in. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Hey,
Um,
props to you,
these
man.
were the two films that I hadn't seen in his filmography, and Never Let Me Go ends up being one that definitely sits itself furthest away from the rest of his filmography. They all kind of have the same, you see this movie, go, oh yeah, that seems like Alex Garland, but Never Let Me Go seems to be this different sort of film. Definitely more romance and character heavy than it is theme based, and it does tell a really interesting story of, what it means to be human, and very much relates it to this sort of slaughterhouse industry that the meat industry's got. But there's those themes in it, but for me, out of the two, 28 Days Later ended up just being a lot more fun for me, especially for the people who are in it. Like, don't get me wrong, Never Let Me Go, Carey Mulligan, Keira Knightley, Andrew Garfield, I'll happily watch those three do anything. They're all spectacular. But with 28 Days Later, you have got Cillian Murphy, you've got Brendan Gleeson, you've got Christopher Eccleston in it. These are just some people that I really enjoy watching on screen, and I had a lot more fun with that because it ends up doing a twist that I like a lot more. Never Let Me Go still has a twist, but this film's twist is a little bit more fun in my eyes, and I just had more fun with 28 Days Later. So for me, it is going to be 28 Days Later.
Yeah, I think this one is also really iconic, and at first glance when you look the film, you're like, why is this film still like so often talked about? I know it was like one of the I used to go to a lot of flea markets to grab DVDs, and that one was like one of the most also maybe not the best thing when people are trying to part ways with the DVD of it, but it's like it was around, everyone owned this, everyone had seen it, and I also had to catch up with it. I hadn't seen it. And then it also is like incredibly dated in the way that it looks, but that kind of helps the world that it's trying to sell. Although it is really unpleasant to watch. I gotta say, it looks so ugly, the way that it's filmed, but it works in the universe that it's in, and how grungy. And I said that like Sunshine and Dredd is like the most violent world, because in 28 Days Later we do cut away quite often when there's some grotesque stuff happening, but there's still like a lot of implied violence that is there. I think it's one of the best zombie films, although there's not, I'd say, a ton of like great ones out there. I think this one does the survival story quite well, and you can see the inspirations for like a series like The Walking Dead, taking probably directly from this, with like the survivor waking up longer. Maybe that's wrong, and Robert Kirkman had the same idea, but it just feels iconic for a filmmaking style. And I'm always going to appreciate a film with Cillian Murphy as the lead. And again, I haven't really seen Never Let Me Go, so I got to vote for 28 Days Later. So yeah, that moves into the next round. And then lastly, we do have his latest film, Civil War, going up against Annihilation, Lachlan, a film that you never got to see in theaters because it didn't even play in Australia. You had to wait
'Cause I
until it's
thought it
out on
was
streaming,
too.
so it's brutal.
No, they thought it was too complex for Australian minds. I might be making that up.
What was
While
it?
you introduce these, let me see if I can find that article.
Well, I guess I'm gonna tell you where I'm leaning with Annihilation and Civil War. To me, this is so far the closest matchup between the two. I think I initially, when I first watched it, I was one of those dummy Australian. Well, I'm not Australian, but I guess those people who were like, "Oh, this is too complex," or just like I didn't get why the story was playing out that it did. And then on a rewatch, I appreciated it a bit more for its visual flair that Garland always tries to bring into his own directorial things. The world that he establishes is always like super rich, and he gets to fill it out a bit more than he does in Civil War, because there's just a backdrop of how people are reacting to this Civil War, and in Annihilation, he gets to craft a wholly different world. When I have to pick between the two, I think the cinematic experience of Civil War is still a superior one to Annihilation, and I've only seen Annihilation on Netflix. So I'm gonna go with Civil War over this one. I think it's the one that I marginally like a bit more. Lachlan, what about you? And did you find
Yeah,
out
from
why
my
you didn't get it?
memory, I remember seeing an article about the film being, here it is, have I found it? Essentially the film was too brainy or too intelligent for audiences, which is why they pulled it out of cinemas and they put it on Netflix instead. I don't know
Hmm.
why I remember that at all, but I remember being pissed off because I had to wait so much longer to actually see the film. Paramount feared it was too brainy and not bankable. So Netflix basically got the rights and they ended up putting it on Netflix.
Hmm.
Which it only released theatrically in the US, but was on Netflix everywhere else. So for me, I remember watching
Yeah.
Annihilation and honestly being blown away. I actually thought it was really, really good when it first came out. Even though I know that there was some people who didn't enjoy it from how, again, complex in quotations I'm saying it was, but honestly, I kind of got it on first go and I could kind of see the themes that it was about. For me, the standout was obviously the scene with the bear, and that was such a tense moment and such an enjoyable sequence. But then Civil War has come out, and that sequence is basically throughout the entire film, and that is,
Yeah.
not the best to be fully tense the entire time, and the film isn't like that. But I feel like he definitely went to 100 for this one and really pulled out all the
Hmm.
stops for Civil War. Again, I don't think it's as rich in terms of themes that Annihilation is, and I find that Annihilation is a bit more of a film that you can chew on and you can think about it, but I don't find Annihilation has that much of a fun rewatch value, and maybe Civil War doesn't, but I feel like I could really rewatch Civil War a couple times just because the action's there and it's a lot more fun, where Annihilation's got that more horror-y aspect and thriller aspect than what Civil War has. So for me, it's a mixed bag, but I'm gonna go with Civil War.
Well, then I guess Annihilation is out. I agree. I think Civil War has something to itself that would lend it to be quite enjoyable on the rewatch, because it's so thrilling in its individual moments. Maybe lesser on an overall story arc compared to Annihilation, but it's just like, as an audience member to experience it, Civil War was a lot of fun, and yeah, really thrilling. So we have our semi-finalists, Ex Machina against Sunshine and 28 Days Later against Civil War. In our first matchup, we do have the heavily favorited Ex Machina going up against Sunshine. Two sci-fi films doing completely different things. One of them staying way more with the characters and AI being a timely thing, and the other one being further into the future with I guess traveling outside of like not our solar system, but towards our sun. I have a clear favorite here, and I assume it's going to be the same for you. unless Sunshine is pulling a huge upset, I assume we can say that like Ex Machina deserves to be like in the final here.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I will say yes, but I'll explain why. For me, Sunshine, you can watch it and you kind of see the film wrap up, and you go, okay, cool, story over. Know what that's about. Know what happened. It explains itself a lot. I think that Sunshine's villain is a little bit more fun than Ex Machina, if I'm honest. Where Ex
Hmm.
Machina has more or less, doesn't really have protagonists and antagonists. Everyone's sort of morally grey in that film, and I think that's what makes
Yeah.
it super super exciting for me. But Sunshine sort of just wraps up, right? There's a fear that the entire Earth will be
Mm.
destroyed unless this mission succeeds, and spoiler alert, the mission succeeds, and nice happy ending. Ex
There's
Machina doesn't do
sunshine
that, and Ex
in Sydney.
Machina is one of the movies that I first remember going, that's not a happy ending. In fact, I don't even know what kind of ending that would be considered, good or bad. Is it good for humanity? Is
Yeah.
it bad for humanity? What is the situation here? And for me, the whole film was just exciting for that. So I love Ex Machina. It's a place in my heart where it's going to go into the next round.
I think it just has aged like fine wine, and we're definitely gonna revisit this one time and time and again as AI advances, and we see the parallels of what he kind of captured with, because the questions, the troubles with like that type of tech doesn't change really, but
No.
it's going to be interesting to see if it's going to be outdated. But from so far revisiting the film, I think he nailed it
Yeah,
in
pretty
like what
much.
the central fear is. But yeah, then we got 28 Days Later against Civil War. I do like how iconic 28 Days Later is. It's getting its third sequel sometime probably next year, and Garland is returning as a writer. The second one he didn't write, he only wrote the first one, so we can expect maybe some anti-military to come up again in the next one. But isn't there something more anti-military than making a whole film about war and then deciding to not make it about the politics, but more about like seeing it unfold and basically making a home message about like, hey, doesn't war suck? We like we said in our review extensively. You mentioned again and again that like it's basically just a warning shot of like, this is not what we want. This is horrible. And 28 days later, something where it escalated way further. The monkeys have already bitten you, and this world has been like been visualized and been told in other zombie films like it, where everything is out to kill you. But the matchup here is kind of beautiful because Civil War is kind of the same way. You're always questioning what the intention is of the next person you meet and how dangerous they are to your own safety for like completely different reasons. But I think Civil War still is better than 28 Days Later in my opinion. Because it's not as dated with the tech, and it's easier to watch the hard stuff in Civil War. So yeah, that's my pick for the final, which is kind of surprising that I would vote it to the final, considering like his overall filmography. What do you think?
For me, 28 Days Later, even though it's not as pretty and glamorous as these other films, I think it still holds up. It tells a fun story that doesn't really need to do much more than that. Just tell the story, and I think
Hmm.
that it's fun in the sense that the big twist is humans fucking suck, man, and that's sort of something that goes throughout his entire filmography of Alex Garland, and that's,
Yeah.
man, other humans fucking suck. They're terrible, and they're the main
Hmm.
bad guy in all of these other sci-fi movies, right? In other sci-fi films, it's
Yeah.
aliens, it's AI, but even in his AI movie, the AI isn't necessarily the bad guy. They're grey, and for me, 28 Days Later doesn't need any of that because it's just a fun zombie flick, and it says, hey, humans still suck, and that's what Christopher Eccleston's character says. It's like men kill men, men killed men before this, men kill men during this, men will kill men after this, and it's like it's a never ending cycle of just hatred towards others and other people, and I really enjoyed 28 Days Later for that. Civil War is
Yeah.
that, but turned up. It really is. Yes, it's prettier. Yes, it's more cinematic, but it also tells a more interesting aspect of well, here's the importance of journalism, here's the importance of telling a story, here's the importance of how it should be neutral. It tells a lot with that one. And for me, whilst 28 Days Later says something pretty basic, and it is a really enjoyable film, and I find that it has more, at least emotionally hitting beats with the death of particular characters, Civil War ends up being the better of the two.
Yeah, I agree. So that moves
But, like,
on to our final, which
only a touch.
we haven't disagreed yet. Yeah, only a tad bit. We haven't disagreed yet. So we have arrived at our final. We have Ex Machina against Civil War. Looking at these, how they're rated, Ex Machina has the highest rating on Letterboxd. Civil War is at number 3. So it's not like it's pulling a huge upset. The other one that we just voted out was number 2, 28 Days Later, followed by Sunshine and Dredd. And then Annihilation is number 6. Not really beloved that much. Men, the lowest one here. So I think we have picked, in our opinion, the best two. And it's surprising that, or I don't know, is it surprising that the two we picked are both films that he directed? We voted out the 2 films that he's written in the semifinal.
I was going to open up by saying, are 2 brains better than 1? Because obviously half of these films are going to be his mind and his mind only, and the rest are going to be Danny Boyle and what's his name, Romanek,
Shane
and
Black.
Whoever, and Pete Travis.
Pete Travis, yeah.
So obviously 1 brain is better than 2 in this situation, but both of these films are heavily complex. Both of these films are definitely saying different things. Both have very similar themes. Both have extremely memorable moments, for me at least. I mean, no one's going to forget Oscar Isaac tearing up that dance floor. No one's going to forget the moment that you kind of first meet Ava. Ava, wasn't it? Yeah, Ava in Ex Machina.
Yeah, Ava, yeah.
You know, you're not going to forget sort of the letdown of Civil War's last 10 minutes after the incredible sort of other hour and a half or whatever it was in terms of runtime that it had. But you're not going to forget as well that Civil War had its moments that were memorable, but they're just not as memorable as Ex Machina. And I think it's a clear winner. I think the other ones, there are arguments to be made, but I think Civil War is really strong, and I think it might build with time, similar to what Annihilation did. Annihilation came out and everyone hated it. Civil War, very similar thing. I think some people are going to come around to it with time, and I still don't think the ending's going to be that great as time goes on, and I think that people have come to a better conclusion with the conclusion of Annihilation. But for me, Ex Machina is great from start to end. I think I've got it twice on 4K and Blu-ray. I'm not 100% sure. I have to double check that, but it's a fantastic film. I love it. My current rating of it is 4.5 stars, because I don't give 5 stars on like the first viewing. I have seen it twice, but I haven't rated it twice on Letterboxd. I only rated it 4.5 stars the other day. Maybe on the rewatch I'll give it 5 stars. But I'm going to see if I got it on 4K and Blu-ray.
I definitely, well, it's streaming on Netflix, so for me, I guess I might even own it on Blu-ray as well. But it's one of those films that work from beginning to end, and where he also doesn't, he's got it twice. It's not 4K in one of them, right?
One of them's 4K.
It's just a Blu-ray?
One of them's 4K, one of them's a Blu-ray.
Oh, that's impressive. I think it's also like a movie that looks stunning, has really good ideas that it sets out to, I guess, answer the questions that it asks, and leaves the stuff open-ended that is unanswerable. It just has interesting character arcs for all of them. Even if they're just like archetypes, they're not like the most fully fleshed out characters where we get flashbacks and backstories, because it's not really what the story needs. I think that is what ultimately really works with this, that the world he establishes is simple enough for its characters. And that's like one of the things that didn't work for me in Civil War, where Lee needs like all of this backstory for her to, spoilers here, make a change in what, like, how she receives war around her, and how like it gives her a panic attack, when usually she's been like this archetype, like this person who's not really shook by anything. And that transition doesn't really work, because we need more of that character. In all of Ex Machina, I think we get just about enough of all three. It's close to a perfect film. So it's the obvious pick to win the Alex Garland bracket, but hopefully if you haven't seen some of his other films, you might have gotten interested to see 28 Days Later for the first time. And don't be surprised, it does really play with like that kind of like it was literally filmed parts of it on a camcorder, so you'll see that. And Sunshine, some other films to go check out. But yeah, Lachlan, Ex Machina is gonna win Alex Garland bracket.
Shocker.
To no one's surprise. But yeah, we do have a recent review of Civil War that we did on a podcast. We get into full-on spoilers there, so you can go check that out in the meantime. And then we do have some other brackets about like Christopher Nolan, and who else did we do? We did Ridley Scott. And yeah, we do these every couple of months because it does take a ton of preparation to watch all of the films that we hadn't seen and revisit them. So a like is very much appreciated. And if you don't want to miss more of our content, then consider subscribing as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I am afraid of the future of AI, and yeah, let's just watch that unfold in fictional form in Ex Machina. We don't need it in our real lives, right, Lachlan?
No, we don't.
Disconnect. All right, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.